Hey, I'm Josh, CTO at EdTech company Genio and software consultant of over 20 years. This is Offscript, a podcast where me and James share unfiltered conversations on building, leading, and learning in today's tech world.
I'm James. I run a digital consultancy making beautiful software. We've got a real focus on AI and IoT.
And today we're going to be talking about, is AI destroying open source? A topic quite close to both me and you, James.
It really is, yeah. I maintain some open source stuff. I've written a popular library, which has just grown arms and legs, and AI keeps including it in stuff. So, yeah, super relevant to me. And yeah, we're keen to just sort of get your thoughts on it.
Yeah, so this is sort of triggered by a few things that's going on in open source at the moment. So there's a big sort of, there's a lot of coverage at the moment on what's going on with Tailwind and how they've had to sadly lay off, I think it was 75% of their engineering team based on what's going on with AI's use of Tailwind in sort of generating code.
Yeah. So
And yeah,
Tailwind are a relatively small team, but still it has an impact because they build a lot of the tooling that actually underpins like most of the modern web, really. So while you've got the Tailwind library itself, there's the VS Code extension, which is maintained by Brad, who used to be our head of front end. He was also employee number one at Tailwind. Then there's all the showcase sort of like example kits which get rolled out. So you actually buy those for hundreds and hundreds of dollars. You buy memberships for your team to get access to the latest uses of Tailwind. And then people use that and bake it into their projects, which is obviously publicly available. LLM scoops that up and regurgitates it for free. And yeah, so there's no reason to visit the Tailwind site. And there's no reason to buy the premium product, which funds all the rest of the good stuff. So, yeah, I think for Tailwind specifically, this is a bad thing. I think what sparked this is somebody put an issue against Tailwind and said, why is this project not got LLM consumable docs? And Adam had a pretty scathing reply saying, this is killing our business basically, and why would I accelerate that further? Which is a completely fair comment, I think.
Yeah, it's a completely fair response. Probably especially raw when you've just had to lay off some people that are really close to you, right? So, yeah, I think, one of the arguments is that AI isn't destroying open source; it's just completely changing the model. And I think right now we're seeing a situation where open source sort of supplies the raw material in terms of, a knowledge base, that experience, that sort of value created in code. And then AI companies are hoovering up that value, most likely sometimes without attribution. And then the maintainers of those projects are just getting hit with the sort of costs and risks of that. So it doesn't feel particularly equal or stable at the moment.
Yeah. And then, maintainers are burdened with the risks. For example, I got hit by quite a severe CVE over Christmas, had to scramble around in my holiday, maintainers set up with the right tokens to publish the package, because NPM have obviously had lots of security issues. So now the tokens only last a certain number of days and there's a new publishing workflow. So yeah, this CV is fairly severe, although there's not many users using it in that way. So it's like, if you're using it in Node.js and there's some functions that you can pass file names into, you could read files outside the directory into the thing. So it's like a high 9, 10 score CVE. So I had to jump on it. That takes, hours out of my life, which I could be billing for, and I get no thanks whatsoever. But it's at the moment it's 5 million weekly downloads. So I feel like I have some like weird sort of moral obligation to keep it ticking along.
It's sort of a bit like the maintainer's responsibility. I think it's the thing that, the thing that irks me a lot about what's happening with AI and open source is the ecosystem was very very human, actually, like in terms of how open source was seen by other contributors or consumers of those projects. I think it was, for me, it was always you were contributing to the greater good. You were putting your work out there so others could learn or benefit from it. It was almost like a pay it forward approach. I'm not saying all open source is that way. Obviously, there's different licensing and all sorts, but I do felt like the ethics and the ethos of the sort of community in general is, yeah, where's that going?
Yeah, it's tricky. Yeah, I mean, some maintainers put in like they want attribution. Some put in I'd rather you didn't use it in military settings, etc. That LLMs ignore all of that.
Yeah.
They just ingest and absorb all that and can reproduce an open source library in another form, which doesn't have that restriction almost immediately. We were just chatting earlier. One of our clients just sent me a link to a repo, which is basically a PDF generator, but like super, like low kilobytes, like very reduced feature set. But I had a quick hop and look through some of the code, and some of it looked really familiar to some of the stuff that I hand wrote 15 years ago. So it's like, it's hard not to be a little bit cheesed off, but also I did put it out in the open. But you can never predict that these kinds of things are going to happen. So
I think the thing is, you put it out in the open when the world was different, right? I think you put it out in the open when there wasn't this mass ability to hoover up everything that you've ever created and regurgitate it in a way that doesn't attribute or credit any of your effort, right? And I think that's probably a big part of it. I wonder almost if it's going to be. I quite like the comparison to sample culture and music, actually, because I think there's been a challenge in music for years around, like, when is a sample a ripoff? Like, when is a sample just like too close to the original? Or, should you be able to sample in the first place? Because ultimately it's stealing someone else's hard work. And I wonder if we're going to get into a situation with that, with code, where it's like, well, how familiar or like how similar does it need to be the same thing as something that someone wrote?
yeah, that's really, really interesting, because being able to sample stuff is extremely valuable for the creative process, and lots of amazing tracks have been made through sampling. And then there was a shift, wasn't there, sort of 90s, 2000s, where everyone started getting litigious, and now you need to get samples cleared. And yeah, your record label gets really arsy with you if you don't get stuff cleared. And what it's creating is a world where people that are signed to the big labels get to do what they want, because the labels almost like cross-license to each other and stuff. So, or you can use everything within that label or whatever. But yeah, new people getting into it, they can only have the bootlegs, can't they?
Is sort of the classic challenge of the more powerful people get to sort of do what they want, I guess.
Yeah, yeah.
So
I think it's really interesting around like owning stuff. Like, I've always thought it was weird that you can own ideas, where copyright doesn't actually cover that, but it's it's the exact order of the words for a certain proportion, and it was designed when the printing press came out, wasn't it? Because before that, copyright didn't matter, because you had to get a monk to handwrite something to copy it, and it took fucking ages. So like, it wasn't a problem. But I think we're going to have another shift, aren't we, with LLMs, because it's now that the order of the words doesn't matter. Copyright doesn't sufficiently cover copying stuff, but I just can't see any alternative to just letting people do what they want.
no, and this is sort of the primary argument that a lot of creative people have had with AI, right? Whether it's the arts, whether it's like people who are writing long-term prose, or the problem is that at the moment people can do just what they want. There is very little governance or guardrails around how you use AI. Even the creators themselves are sort of laughing it off almost. Like, there's the recent comment from Sam Altman saying that he thinks AI might destroy the world, but it doesn't matter because we can make some money in the meantime. It's not
absolutely ridiculous.
No, it's not a feeling of like, oh, they're taking that seriously, I trust them. It's sort of like, well, it's very much the Wild West at the moment, right?
Yeah, definitely. But there are some good things. I think
good.
I think despite the world ending, like there is the ability for people to like really easily contribute and understand complex open source projects. So, yeah, they can. Somebody with relatively little experience of a particular project can dive in and start to change it with relative ease. I guess even if they're not familiar with that language as well, or completely new to coding altogether. So, I mean, that can only be a good thing for like students and people wanting to get into the industry, right?
Yeah, we were saying also for like those fringe roles that aren't quite coding but like are very close to like the delivery process and like understanding what we need to build essentially. Like we were talking about BAs, for example, like the ability to give a BA like a Claude Code license and be like, well, you know exactly how to describe probably what we're trying to achieve here, like go at it and see where you get to. I think is incredibly empowering and incredibly beneficial to companies in terms of streamlining efficiencies. And yeah, it's definitely like a multiplier, right? It's an unlocker. I just, yeah, it comes at a cost, I guess.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. Um, is there any other good points about this?
I hope so. Yeah, so I think one of the other things that's probably worth noting is the positive impact it does have on open source maintainers, and there are some positives in terms of previously maintainers may have felt like the burden is on them to sort of govern the project and sort of put a lot of the effort into solving some of the more difficult challenges, which is also part of the fun, right? But I think the ability now to get AI to solve maybe problems that you haven't had the bandwidth to solve, or just triaging issues or pull requests, or maybe doing a lot of those sort of monotonous release tasks like drafting release notes and getting change logs sorted and just like tagging and releasing. All that stuff becomes a lot easier. So actually, maybe it gives maintainers more focus to actually do some of the more interesting tasks around a project.
Yeah, I think a lot automate some of that grunt work is definitely a good thing, especially for projects that might not have some of that tooling in place, around like, yeah, getting documentation in place. Yeah, I think in a perfect world, this would encourage maintainers to do like proper testing and things like that, automated unit tests, because it is so much quicker to get those kinds of things spun up and in place. Then when you get those PRs through, you know that they're actually passing the test still.
Yeah, it also sort of democratizes knowledge because knowledge is more discoverable then, because you've sort of got the entire code base to reference when sort of talking to an LLM. So I think for me, it's like, newcomers to the project, people wanting to learn more about the project can sort of ask questions, dig into things in a different way than they ever have done before. And it also reduces the bottleneck of having like, you know, the classic sort of, I put a pull request there, I don't think it's quite right, can you have a look, or I need to know how this works before I can contribute, and that sort of is removed because you can do that. AI becomes your rubber duck, right? You just sort of start to dig into the code with less fear or less uncertainty.
Yeah, yeah, makes a lot of sense. And yeah, I guess there are flip sides to this, but I think it is a net win, to be honest. Um,
Mhm.
yeah, I think also around the sort of experimentation side as well. Like it's very very quick to try something. So I think a lot of what engineering organizations used to do years ago is spend a lot of time like hypothesizing, planning, thinking up front, even though y- everybody knows deep down that like agile works the best in a lot of enterprises. They still sort of stick to that rigid. Let's just hypothesize, and I think
Yeah,
now it's really difficult to ignore the quick POC, the quick tech spike, because you could literally do it while people are in the meeting talking about the code,
yeah,
and it would be quicker than the conversation. And you go, look, here
yeah,
it is, it works.
yeah,
And then people can actually go, oh, but it doesn't work quite the way we wanted it to, or there's this wrong with it, or have you thought about that? Um,
yeah, yeah. It's just like wireframing on crack, right? And I think it's. I was chatting to the CPO of Genio, Holly. She's awesome, and we were talking about what it's doing for the the product cycle, and like in general, like that discovery paralysis is becoming much less common, because ultimately you can go, well, let's just build it, let's deploy it, let's have a little play around with it. Obviously there's sort of guardrails you need to operate within. You're not going to deploy it to production, but I do think it's so much easier to sit and poke a real thing than a wireframe that's clumsily knocked together, or especially if you've got the project to sort of reference. You can go, look, just build something that works with the code base, the design system. It's so much easier, right?
Yeah, and from an ego perspective as well, like because you haven't spent a week on it, and you're like, look, I've literally just done this now. People are happy to poke holes in it.
It reduces the sunk cost thing, doesn't it? Like you've not sunk your time into it. You're not going to get defensive. It's very different.
And I get very attached, or used to get very attached to a particular implementation. Like I'll make this sort of adapter pattern thing for a plugin thing or something, and you just get so far down the road, you're like, you can't see any other way that it could work.
Yeah.
And so you just push on, and then that's how it is forever. But actually, if you take a step back, maybe it's rubbish.
You do see that, like, from some maintainers, like that first commitment, be like, this is the best and only way we can do this. You're like, I'm not sure. Yeah.
I don't know if you ever tried to land a patch in Laravel. You wouldn't, because you're allergic to PHP, but Taylor is like that. He's like, no, that's rubbish. That doesn't match my vision. And he just says no to everything. But
I mean,
you got to kind of respect it somewhat.
Well, you've got to govern the project somehow, and I guess you've got to have certain standards. Not everyone has to agree with the standards. By the way, I'm not allergic to PHP. I'd like to be clear. I've got like a mild sort of irritant to it. I think coming from Ruby, it just felt like the syntax just wasn't as nice, and I didn't enjoy it.
Yeah,
much,
it's awful. Yeah, I mean, it's very rare I touch a PHP project these days, but yeah, it's just like pearl in a trench coat, isn't it? Like it's.
I love how you end up ripping it more than me there. That's wonderful. Cool.
Yeah.
So what? Okay, we've talked about some of the benefits. What are the bad sides to this? Because I think we opened with some of our concerns.
The bad is it completely destroys most open source businesses' business model. If you can recreate their offering without going to their site and being upsold to some premium services, then yeah, you're really in a bad place, because that's where all that fresh thinking comes from. I don't think by the time someone's chosen to pick an open source library, they're not the person making decisions with money, but they might have a budget for training, or they might have a budget for some resources, and they might go, actually, I want to buy that Tailwind starter kit thing because I think it's going to really help the team. And yeah, you need to have lots and lots and lots of little sales. It's not like your company's going to be like, we get 20 grand's worth of value from this, we're going to give them 20 grand. It's no. Like they just need the odd 300 quid pack here and there, don't they?
Yeah, I think the challenge is you're losing access to that expert consultancy. You're losing access to that expert view of like, I built it this way because of this, and actually, if you use it this way, it's going to work like that for what you're trying to achieve. And I think I think the consultancy gigs are rare through open source. Like that premium upsell, hire me for a month or two, and I'll get you up to speed on making the most of this project. That is rare. I think, as you said, the volume small sales is where that sustainability comes from. And I just think, yeah, it's really sad to see with the Tailwind side of things that maintainers are not seeing any compensation, attribution. They're having no influence in this new ecosystem. They're having no ability to position and upsell or explain the ethos behind the project. It's just the code is just used in place without any context, really.
Yeah, and and as we mentioned, completely takes any of the licensing nice little asks out. It doesn't abide by any of those as well. So yeah.
I guess the other chat. Oh, go on. Sorry.
No, I was just going to say, I think that that attribution thing is so important, just for like pointing people in the right place, getting the traffic to the sites. Like, yeah, I think it's going to be really tricky because the people that know most about these libraries are the best place to progress them further, and so they go really niche into a rabbit hole of thinking. I think we might see like almost like the dumbing down of programming, where there's not that original thinking anymore.
Mm. Yeah, it becomes like a stagnation of problem solving almost. It's like, well, if problem solving becomes harder because I've got to actually write the code myself. Like, why not just use this regurgitated set of solved problems? I guess in a way, it actually constrains creativity because ultimately the creativity is bound by the knowledge base that's there, right? And if that's just existing SaaS products, open source products, you know, there is still a whole host of things that need to be built or should be built, a whole host of open source libraries that could exist that solve problems in completely different ways. And I guess we're really constraining that based on just what we know, right?
Yeah, definitely. I guess another issue is, which we have seen on some of my stuff as well, is like you get a load of PRs opened that look and smell right, but they don't really add a lot. So
Mm.
I mostly ignore most PRs because I just want to keep it working, and it's too high risk for me to like. Yeah, we've got so many users now. If I do a point release and it's broken, I'm going to have
Mm.
a really bad week. Whereas
Yeah.
if I just fix the CVEs and just tickle it here and there, it's broken in this build thing. That's kind of the bits
Mm.
that I just need to keep on top of. But
Mm.
there's so much noise now, and we did used to see it a little bit. Was it Hacktober? Um, when you
Mm.
tag your repo with that hashtag, and then you get a load of junior devs trying to change one file for no reason other than to collect a point.
Yeah.
But it's like that on steroids. So um,
It reminds me
yeah,
of like years ago when I was trying to contribute to the Rails code base and I made a PR that fixed a small typo in one of the docs. It's like completely pointless change. And I imagine the amount of time it took someone to review that and to like actually merge it was more than it took me to do it. And it's like, are you actually costing the maintainers more at this point?
yeah. But you can say that you changed Rails. You
I
contributed.
contributed to Rails, yeah. 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 It's one of those things, isn't it?
Yeah, I think something that we talked about just before this was around learning, and I know you're very keen about this. But what do you think the impact is around like being able to truly understand the code base, open source or not?
I think I think we've sort of covered this a little bit previously, but Claude Code's amazing if you're an experienced engineer because you can sort of look at the code, see it looks about right, and keep sort of going. And you're not really worried because that prior knowledge is there. You sort of know why it's sticking things together in a certain way most of the time. I think we talk about friction a lot in the learning process. Sometimes friction is really beneficial because you want to go through that friction, that struggle a little bit to help embed that knowledge, to help understand the sort of design of something and why it works the way it does. I guess this is completely skipping that process and just making it so accessible that it's just easier to keep hitting yes. And if it's broken, at the end of that cycle, you go, it's actually broken, and you're not really thinking about the sort of creation and what it's putting together. That's a big concern for me.
Yeah, yeah, definitely. Yeah, learning through friction is super important for junior devs, well, and senior devs as well in areas that they don't understand. I think I don't know if you heard of Chapter Pal. It's by one of the main thinkers in the AI space, but it's basically adds friction back into reading. So you can only read like a little bit at a time, and then you can ask questions, and it sort of adds that friction back in. Uh,
Nice.
yeah, there's a good little about page on it, but it's all about active learning, but in a world of LLMs. So it integrates an LLM with it, but it yeah, I think you find it really interesting. Probably some ideas for you to nick for your company as well.
Yeah, yeah, it is interesting. Yeah, because it's funny. It's like these systems are currently trying to reduce friction and trying to make this stuff dumbed down and accessible in a lot of areas. It's interesting to then sort of retrofit friction into that and try and look at, okay, if we were to break this. I mean, you're seeing this with a lot of the sort of big AI companies' efforts to create learning tools or to create healthcare tools and all these things that have necessary governance or friction-based steps in them. They're usually there by design, not because it could be optimized. And yeah, it's really interesting to see them then going, oh, actually, maybe just making this really easy and accessible isn't the right thing to do. And there's probably a process that we should follow.
Yeah, definitely. I think, like, for example, for me, like reading content is is better for me to retain that knowledge if I'm taking notes about it. If I just listen to something like an audio book, you almost let it sometimes wash over you, and your mind
Mm,
goes elsewhere, doesn't it? So
yeah.
it's going to be the same with using LLMs on autopilot, pecking yes all the way through. Are you really paying attention? Are you are you properly looking at what it's doing? And that's how
Yeah.
mistakes happen.
And it's a matter of control, right? Because then if you've got this entire app that's been vibe coded and you've not input into the process, you don't understand what it's written, you're sort of beholden to the agent then to maintain it, to fix it, to support your business, which is quite a scary place to be, I think. Um,
Yeah, definitely.
but yeah. Okay. And I guess the sort of final thing is licensing, which has been a hot topic since AI started to explode, not just in engineering, but across, the arts, across, copywriting, big sort of books. It's just generally like using it as a corpus of knowledge, using it as a source of an input instead of actually respecting the licensing of which it was put out there with.
Yeah, I mean, we know that the supply chain was poisoned early on. So Meta, well, all of the big LLMs were trained on copyrighted material. We saw emails from even as high as Mark Zuckerberg getting people to torrent stuff on their own laptops. And now newer open clean models are also trained on the outputs of those dirty models. So the the, the pool's poisoned and
Yeah.
it's not fixable. Because if you want a comparable model, you need to train on those outputs. So yeah, if you pay OpenAI a bunch of money, send it a load of prompts, you they say that you effectively own that output, and that clean output in inverted commas is being used to train another model. But it's never
Yeah.
truly clean because the source was never clean.
I'm not sure if we talked about this on a previous podcast, but someone proposed an alternative approach to this. I'm not sure if you've seen it. I'm really sorry. I can't remember who it was that I'm like AI now. I can't actually attribute the original source. But it was someone proposed what the model could look like for an AI sort of safe, almost like SEO approach, essentially, where you would give AI permission to scrape content from your site. You would give it in a format that is really digestible for the sort of the AI, but also it allowed the attribution to work properly. And maybe there's an ability then to like paywall it almost. So like, if it was scraped by OpenAI, you'd almost like charge AI for that scrape. And there's a way that you could like refresh that content, make sure it's current, make sure it had the most up to date. And I think it was an interesting approach and actually really sensible. But the reality is for that to happen en masse would take years to implement. And, capitalism waits for nobody, right?
Yeah, well, Cloudflare dusted off a really old part of the internet, which is the 402 status code, which requires payment. And they've implemented this in private beta, but you can effectively, they're bringing back the old idea of micropayments.
Mm,
So you pay per crawl, and y- if people really want to scrape your content because you are keeping up to date and it is super valuable, maybe that would work. But
mm.
people have been talking about micropayments since like the 2000s, haven't they? It was just never taken off. But maybe this is a catalyst to actually make that work.
Yeah, maybe. Maybe. Well, someone's going to jam crypto in there as well at some point, right? I'm
Oh,
sure. So
God. Yeah, let's get a really slow distributed database in there while we're at it.
that'll fix things. So what do you think? Where do you think we're going with this then? What happens? What happens next?
I think it gets a lot worse before it gets better, basically. I think there's a critical point where somebody like Google or Microsoft go, this is breaking the internet. And then I don't know what happens after that. But it like Microsoft own GitHub, they probably have the most power over anyone to actually fix some of this stuff. Like that, yeah, they could pay gate crawlers for access to new code potentially, and they'd be able to do it across where most of the world code, open code sits. I can't think of any other place where that could be fixed. Google got rid of their open code hosting stuff. There's not a lot of stuff there. Can't think of any of the big players that would be able to fix this. It's probably Microsoft's remit, isn't it?
I mean, it's that or more projects go closed source, right? And there's like maybe a different standard for making that information available through like AI emerges. Maybe there's a way to create packages that don't allow training and like training on that data, but allow you to see that data into that environment. Maybe there's a way that you can charge per prompt, or I don't know. There must be a new set of standards that emerge where we have the ability to understand the usage and either charge for it or at least find a way to channel some of that value back to maintainers. I think maybe it's a different licensing thing. As you said, maybe it's something that's enforced by the platform providers that host code. Maybe it's something in between.
Yeah, it almost feels like the universal basic income conversation, but for open source maintainers, doesn't it? But
well, some of these models work in the real world.
Yeah, we don't need much. We just need just need a few quid here and there for a new laptop. The odd pizza. No, I think it's probably more problematic than that for sure.
I think so. Yeah, I mean that'll be a real sign the tech industry is in decline when you're not able to put on pizza for for hack days. That'll be a real sign of the times.
Yeah, that's it. But no, that's been a really interesting chat. I think although we ended on a lot of bad notes, I do think that AI is generally going to make stuff better in terms of like being able to ship quality code. I do think there's going to be a lot of slop, but I think if you can automate it in the right way and direct it with strong leadership, making stuff that's good is just going to get easier. So it does raise the floor, and it does potentially raise the ceiling. I don't know if we've seen much ceiling raising as we'd like yet, but it's possible, isn't it?
Yeah, I think my only hope is that we're not going to see huge casualties in those that really like create the culture around like open source, and also just really have defined a new level of creativity for like creators, builders like me and you. I think Tailwind, I know there's a lot of hate for Tailwind in some of the purer sort of CSS communities, but equally that's done exactly the same for CSS for a lot of people. It's lowered the barriers. It's made it really easy to build much more beautiful interfaces that work really nicely. I'm sure there's a few people that tell me to fuck off because I know actually there's a few people that really hate Tailwind, but I do think it's going to do good things in the long run. It's just a shame to see casualties for those that have been huge contributors to defining open source, for example.
Yeah, absolutely. Cool. Well, thanks very much for chatting. And if you'd like to hear more about this kind of stuff, tune into OffScript, get subscribed, Spotify, Apple, wherever you get your podcasts. But yeah, we'll see you in a few weeks.
Yep. Cheers, James. See ya. Bye.
Cheers. Bye.